Hello and welcome to the Thursday, September 4th, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich, recording today from Jacksonville, Florida. And this episode is brought to you by the SANS.edu Graduate Certificate Program in Purple Team Operations. Our honeypots last couple of days picked up some attacks for the Dassault DELMIA Apriso software. Now, you're probably not familiar with that. That's not necessarily sort of a household name, but it's a manufacturing operation management software, one of these complex packages that basically interface with your plant and your enterprise research planning system and allow you to sort of get a holistic view of a manufacturing process, sort of from the devices on a manufacturing line all the way to the bookkeeping. There have been a number of vulnerabilities in this software in recent months. This particular one that we see exploited is a deserialization vulnerability that was patched in June. There were a couple other remote code execution vulnerabilities that I didn't see so far being exploited. The advisories from Dassault are fairly minimal. It's sort of a little one-liners, essentially what the vulnerability is all about. Definitely, if you're running this type of software, make sure you keep it patched. Not just this particular software from Dassault, but any sort of complex operation management software and such tends to have vulnerabilities, in particular deserialization vulnerabilities like this. We have seen them also often in ERP software. And yes, they are usually not easy to patch. So you want to stay ahead of that, not wait for the emergency, like now hearing that there is active exploitation of this vulnerability before you have to apply any patches for this type of software. And we got the monthly update for Android from Google. This is the September version of this update. Two vulnerabilities here. Both privilege escalation vulnerabilities are already being exploited. One of these vulnerabilities affects the Linux kernel. I believe that's a vulnerability that also has been discussed with respect to Linux in general. And then there's a second vulnerability in the Android system. There are, in addition to these privilege escalation vulnerabilities, additional vulnerabilities that can lead to remote code execution from what they're calling a network adjacent position. So not necessarily across the internet, but someone being sort of on the same Wi-Fi network or on the same LTE or cellular network that may also be exploitable this way. Well, as usual, update as these updates become available for your particular phone. And then we have yet an interesting certificate event to talk about. This time it's a certificate for the IP address 1.1.1.1. This IP address is used by Cloudflare for its DNS service. So a certificate that is valid for this IP address may be useful to intercept DNS over HTTPS, DNS over quick connections to that IP address. The certificate authority that issued this certificate is Fina RDC. As far as I know, they're not universally trusted. However, they're trusted by Microsoft's Edge browser. This certificate was issued a few months ago. I think it says 3 months when it was first seen. It was properly added to certificate transparency logs, but only now was noted for some reason. Well, there are a lot of certificates in those logs. Also, it was added as an alternative name, which isn't quite as obvious. The main subject CN for the certificate was test1.hr. .hr is for Croatia, so it's their country top-level domain. Given that it was test1.hr and test12.hr, it could be that it was just a test someone was running. Still not good that certificate made it sort of through the certificate authority. But at this point, we don't know what the purpose of the certificate was. Just, that it has been around and is probably still valid as of me recording this podcast. And this vulnerability, I'm really just covering in part because it's sort of familiar. It hits a couple buttons with me. In the ESP IDF web server, an interesting authentication bypass happens by the web server only comparing as many characters as the user actually provides. So if you provide a short password, like just the letter S, then only the first letter of the password S is compared. And with that, of course, you can primitively brute force passwords. ESPF IDF web server, if you're familiar with this, it's part of these little prototype boards that are often used in home automation and like, where you have a little ESP CPU with usually some Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and such interfaces that allow you to automate some tasks. Well, patch, of course, as usual. I'm not sure how many are exposing ESP Home to the internet. Well, that's it for today. So thanks for listening. Thanks for liking. Thanks for subscribing. And as always, special thanks if you're leaving a comment in your favorite podcast platform. I think I haven't seen a new comments in a while in Apple or Amazon in particular. Not a lot of people are apparently listening to Alexa in the morning to this podcast. But anyway, that's it for today, and talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.